2020 has come and has gone, and we're a quarter of the way into 2021. What did you do last year that got the school through that, and being the leader of the community there?
Okay. What did I do? I did lots, Greg. I guess from my perspective, it was really important that it was virtual leadership. So the whole leadership model at school had to change a little bit. It became a bit flatter, and there was that gradual release. So I had to let go of a lot of things that perhaps in the past you sort of took a little bit of responsibility for and trust in your colleagues. And so, I guess the decisions that were made, as a team, and weren't just coming from me, because I was leading virtually in many ways, both for the staff and for the kids. And I guess that led to us making sure that there was real consistent communication channels that were opened up. And it led us to move away from some of the traditional things, that we'd done in the past, the traditional ways of communicating, like your briefings and your bulletins. And that was, again, for everyone in the community, that we had to look at some other ways to communicate effectively. And so, little things like, YouTubes and videos and, the Zooms, obviously, all of those things became important to us. So, for me, that was one of the big tools and the big takeaways. And I guess we introduced a thing where we called it a learning engagement tool. I mean, I stopped sweating the small things, and it was about the big thing. And the big thing was the learning. So we didn't have the kids regress. So it was good because I didn't have to worry about uniform and chewing gum.
I love that idea. Don't sweat the small things, yeah.
Yeah, and it was about the learning. So we just didn't want the kids to regress. And we came up as a team with this tool called a learning engagement tool. And it's still been operational this year. And what it is, it's a Google form that had all the kids listed in their classes, and teachers had access to it, and parents had access to it. And we'd go in, and the kids had access to it. We'd go in and we'd actually identify where they were at with their work. So the work that we were sharing with them, and they had to complete, we'll allocating colours to it. So green meant that, they pretty much completed and done a great job. And amber meant it was a little bit sketchy and they were sort of part of the way along the path. And red indicated that they weren't touching it, or they weren't in dialogue with the work. And that was the concern. So from that, we were able to then put in place those calls and those emails home, and just making sure that we had the kids, accessing the work. Didn't have to worry too much about those that were in the green domain. They were going well. But it led to a lot more of those calls being made home, and those emails being made home to say, look, your son or daughter needs to engage in a little bit of this work. Can we help you? So it's more from a wellbeing perspective. Is there any reason? And that tool was it was just a great tool visually. And we've actually decided only about 2 weeks ago that, given term one's come to a conclusion, we're going to reinvigorate that tool, and we're going to actually put all the kids on it again and have it open to the staff to say, where are all your children at in your different classes? Are they at the red, the green, or the amber? And it's going to help us then to make sure that we dialogue with the parents early term 2 about where they're at, and the kids. It's more really with the kids, coaching the kids. You haven't quite got this, or where are you at, or how can we support you? How can we help you to grow? And then it's going to lead to no surprises come parent-teacher interviews at the end of term 2. So that learning engagement tool was a real win.
Did you think it challenged some of your sort of pre-held perspectives about leadership? Yeah,
it did. I suppose what it did, Greg, is, and we've invested in this year, is it actually made us coaches. And I don't say that, I say that easily, my interest in my sporting background, and I just think that coaching model is critical. So we ended up coaching each other as staff, and that was part of that wellbeing, touch base. I had a thing called a touch base, a touch base schedule where I had pods of teachers working to touch base with each other. And I tried to touch base with them ongoing just to find out how they were and how they were going. Did they need anything? Because obviously a lot of them weren't here on site. But it helped us to also coach the kids. So we actually modelled coaching approaches with each other, like, how are you going? How can you put a little bit on this? Or is that working, or it hasn't quite worked? Or how can I get a little bit more buy-in from the kids or from my ALA? So it helped to be, I was sort of the head coach, but we had assistant coaches, and they all did wonderful jobs at that ground roots, bringing things up. But we ended up coaching the kids. So whenever we dialogued with the kids, we were coaching them. in terms of what they could do a bit more to get a better play. You know, like we're trying to develop a set of play. And we've actually introduced this year, Greg, growth coaching has become a model for us at the school. We've actually invested in it, and we've just had 20 teachers go through that first phase of it. And we're going to look to make it part of our strategy.
Great. Well, look, just the last question. What did you learn about leading, you think, last year as you reflect back on the experience?
I guess I learned communication was critical. Gone were the days of communicating fortnightly through the newsletter. We had to come up with some real creative ways of communicating. Communicating with the families and with the staff on a date them. You know, short, sharp little snippets, videos, Zooms, quick messages sent out, but through different modes too. So I learned that was critical, and that whole idea of, you know, relational trust with my staff, or professional trust, I suppose. And I like, you know, you gave us that ability to make local decisions, and we're really appreciative of that. And I invested that in the staff, or embedded that in the mindset of the staff. We're making local decisions. We're not like Xavier or any other school. What does our community need? And I think that making local decisions was something that the staff really appreciated. They were able to put their spin on things really well. Yeah. We know their kids, we know their stories. And what it allowed for me too is I actually made a lot of phone calls that perhaps I wouldn't have made in the past. Other than those negative phone calls, I made a lot of wellbeing phone calls, and I learned a lot more about the story of our community and our families. You know, and they needed this and they needed access.
That whole idea of, you know, of being present, I think, is a theme that's coming through. As they reflect on the leader, that you had to be more present, and you could do it in a variety of ways in communication. So that's a great testimony. So look, thanks very much.
All right, Greg. Good talking to you.